Alright guys, so I did want to make a video regarding some old gens, specifically Generation 4 ZU or DPP ZU as I will be saying for the rest of this video. But yeah, wanted to make a BKC style-esque, video just talking about, one of my favorite old gens of all time, DPP ZU. And the tier is pretty interesting, all things considered. It's gone through a lot of changes in the last how many years I've been playing the tier. And I think it's at its best position yet that I've been playing DPPZU. Is definitely in his best meta that I've ever played. But either way, we're going to be talking about a very pivotal part of the meta game that DPPZU has to offer, which is the water type Pokemon that are usable in DPPZU, and basically some sort of history behind it. Like I'll be explaining all of that stuff as well, and currently how the water type Pokemon in the tier pretty much define the tier as a whole. But yeah, let's get into it. So we have this box ready because there's a lot of Pokemon that I'm ready to talk about in this video, because water is still the most frequent type in all Pokemon, and the same applied back in Generation 4. So yeah, let's just speak about it. So DPPZU was always a tier where water types were dominant, because realistically, let's look at water's defensive profile for a second, yeah? So we're going to do /weak water, for example. So water only has two weaknesses, yeah? Electric and grass, with pretty good 4 resistances to back that up to itself, steel, ice, and fire. Now, fire isn't necessarily common, so it's not the most important thing, and at the same time, ice isn't particularly common, neither is steel. Like, steel isn't particularly a strong offensive type in general, but especially back in Gen 4. But at the same time, water resistant to itself is probably the most useful, resist it has. But either way, like, if you come look at the Pokemon that are available in DPPZU, unfortunately the builder still shows Pokemon that are usable in DPP NU, so I'm pretty much just gonna have to go off head what's usable in DPPZU. Luxray is usable, Minun, which is pretty much outclassed by Plusle over here, so Minun doesn't get used. Pachirisu is like pretty bad as well. Pikachu is niche, but as you can see, like, and the rest are obviously NFEs, which are, more or less legal in DPPZU, but, they're obviously, like, not that good in general. Like, the rest of these aren't good Pokemon in the tier. So, like, the only common Pokemon that water types ever really have to struggle against is, Luxray and the rare Plusle, So, that's already something good for water types in general. Like, there isn't that many of his weaknesses in the meta. And also looking at the other side of the coin, grass types, again, the only legal grass types on this list are Carnivine, which is pretty good, Cherim, which is pretty bad, Parasect is always bad. Like, Parasect has never been good, and obviously Pokemon like Tropius, and obviously we have some NFEs that we delved into, like Grovyle, Grotto, and Gloom, the 3Gs at this point. So yeah, those are like the usable grass types. So again, water's weaknesses aren't that common in the tier. Like, things like defensive grasses are common, but water still has a way of getting around them. And in terms of offensive pressure, Luxray and Plusle are there, but Plusle isn't really that common. But yeah, things like that benefit all of the water types in the tier. So yeah, let's speak about some of these water types in general. We're going to be going over the water types that are no longer in the tier but were previously in the tier. So let's start off with Lapras first. Now, why was Lapras banned from DPPZU? Well, Lapras was pretty much a stat god in terms of DPPZU, like 535 BST in the tier, where the likes of Persian is the best Pokemon. Like, Lapras was doing pretty well in the stats department, massive HP stat, pretty solid defensive profile as well, with 80 defense and 95 special defense, and they also just did damage. Like, Lapras was impossible to really take down, and its coverage was just too much for the tier to handle pretty much. Like, in terms of what Lapras had in terms of checks, it was your own Lapras, and still it was just a Hidden Power Grass war versus Hidden Power Grass to chip the Lapras down. And Lapras pretty much just had the chokehold on the meta game in terms of other options as well, because its ability Water Absorb made it a water immunity, so other water types could not really thrive under Lapras's reign. Like, Kingler was still common, which also is banned from DPPZU, and I'll also talk about after Lapras. But the only way Kingler was really getting past Lapras was with Superpower, which obviously hits Lapras for pretty hard damage. But at the same time, it could easily just switch in. It could be like, you could run Chople Berry as well to survive the Superpower, live, and then take out Kingler with a Hidden Power Grass. And Lapras was just an unhealthy presence in the tier. Hardly any defensive answers. Like, right now, like water types still can get handled by grass types, but water types typically have Ice Beam as coverage to hit them for super effectively. But Lapras, the Ice Beam is its stab move, so grass types never really want to switch in because a combination of Hydro Pump, Ice Beam pretty much just kills all of them. Gloom, Grottle, Carnivine, and again, those aren't like there's only 3 defensive grass types. So, like, what do you think the rest of the tier is doing against Lapras? Absolutely nothing. Impossible to take out, pretty bulky, and also just kills everything in one hit. Like, it was insane how much Lapras was in the metagame. Kingler. Now, Kingler had, on the opposite side of the spectrum, Lapras hit on the special side, Kingler hit on the physical side. Now, Kingler was very hard to stop because it could set up an agility, click Crab Hammer, has coverage in superpower, and the grass types didn't really want to even come in too, like it doesn't have any ice coverage, but it does have access to X-Scissor, which is super effective against, Carnivine, neutral against Gloom, beats Grottle as well. And like Kingler's 130 attack stat was just too massive as well. The thing is, Kingler also worked well with Baton Pass, which in modern, or not modern generations, retro generations, there's a Baton Pass clause, so only one of your Pokemon on your team can have Baton Pass. You would Baton Pass an attack boost into Kingler, probably more while using SD. Baton Pass into Kingler, set up an agility, and you kind of just kill everything in the entire tier. Like, there's no counterplay to that, really. Like, Kingler does have respectable physical bulk, despite his low HP, so it had ample opportunities to set up on Pokemon like, Persian, for example. Wouldn't really take too much, and then you'll just kill it in the next turn. Also, like, a lot of the Stealth Rockers as well in the tier, which are mostly just Rock and, Steel types. Typically, even a combination of both sometimes, like Probopass, for example. That's obviously weak to water. You obviously threaten that out, like, very easily. You threaten out a Pokemon like Camerupt. You can't switch in on it, though, but you threaten it out because, Camerupt's times fall weak to water. And yeah, it was pretty obvious how broken Kingler was, so we had to ban it, which is a shame because it's my favorite water type, but it was holding back the meta as well. Like, we had Lapras and Kingler in the same tier once upon a time, and we had no respite from these guys, and the tier wasn't really particularly fun to play at that point in time. But that was only like some recent changes a couple of months ago. Next up, Rollwin. I did not say that properly. Warren, God, English. But Warren was basically Lapras. Like, I can't even say it was a Lapras 1.5. They're so similar to one another. Warren obviously hits harder and is overall relatively the same bulk as it. 130 HP versus 110, but Warren had higher defense and slightly less special defense. So they were basically the same Pokemon. Like, Warren was also faster than Lapras. Not that really made a difference, but Warren was there. Basically just did the same thing. It had Surf. It didn't have Hydro Pump, but that didn't affect its damage output whatsoever. It had Ice Beam, Hidden Power Grass. Like, Warren just did the same exact thing Lapras did, and that's why we also banned it. Like, again, lack of answers. Like, it did not go down in any sort of hits whatsoever. Like, Warren was so bulky, like, you could run like Protect realistically to get leftovers, because obviously what weaknesses that Lapras and Warren had were Stealth Rocks, and Stealth Rocks are mostly a thing that stay up in DPPZU because our Rapid Spinners are pretty bad, as like most people don't know, but pre-Generation 6 Defog did not remove Hazard, so Rapid Spin is the only form of Hazard removal. And when you get to a tier that power level is so low like DPPZU, like, we are not left with good spinners. So yeah, Rocks are mostly up. Like most games, Rocks are just staying up. So Warren and Lapras had to take 25% of their HP when coming in, but you could run Protect, alleviate that slightly, and still you'd take hits quite well. Like, you wouldn't just drop instantly. Like, it also helps that some of Warren's weaknesses, for example, like fighting, like, there's practically no fighting types in DPPZU, so that's like basically one of their weaknesses just gone. So and there also water types that can Oko grass types. So like, it was a very tough time with these two in the tier. Specifically these three. Like, I'm happy they're banned because they were just broken in general. And the last one I wanted to talk about was Gorobis. Now, by the time I started playing DPPZU, Gorobis wasn't even here. Like, that's how long ago Gorobis has been gone from the tier. But from what I can assume, Gorobis getting bad, like a spec set. Like at the time, like DPZU still relatively has the same defensive Pokemon that it has now. You still have your bulky steel types. You might have lost some things like Quagsire, Tangela, Solrock, for example, in the past, but Gorobis still ate those guys up. Like 114 special attack with a choice specs. I can just imagine Gorobis just OHKOing most of the meta. Like, look how much damage Hydro Pump does in Generation 4. 120 base power coming off of 114 special attack, where your premier defensive grass type answers are the likes of Grottle. Like, yeah, it's obvious though why Gorobis was banned. Also, like, what Huntail can pull off now with a Rain Dance free attack set, I could imagine Gorobis just does that to even worse degree, because, the significant difference between Huntail and Gorobis' special attack stat, like, obviously makes a huge difference in damage. So, yeah, these are the banned, the ones that we don't like. These 4 water types are no longer in the tier, and we're better off without them at this point. But, yeah, let's go on to the more interesting stuff, the meta at large in the present day. Let's talk about it. But yeah, before we get into that, just in case you guys haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I'm on my way to 200. I'm on my way to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you guys aren't subscribed yet and enjoy the content that this channel provides, please consider subscribing. I would much appreciate it. But either way, I'll talk about these two right now in, I don't know why I'm scrolling down when I can just type. But yeah, let's talk about Whiscash and let's talk about Crawdaunt, because the other water types are in a position where I can say that they've basically risen from the depths because of the fact that, we banned the previous 3 waters, excluding Gorobis, Lapras, Kingler, and Walrein. So, like, I'll talk about those water types, or like, they basically make up the majority of the water types in the tier, but they'll get their own section. But I did want to speak about Whiscash and Crawdaunt first, because they're different in the matter that they were never like niche or lesser of options at the time when Kingland, Lapras and Walrein were in the team, because Whiscash had its own niche of being a Dragon Dance Pokemon. Like, it's a very one-dimensional Pokemon, but it's very good at what it does. It has Dragon Dance, and it's a pretty like strong late game cleaner, because like a +1 is like pretty hard to outspeed Whiscash. Like, you basically even need Persian, which is 1 point faster. But again, Whiscash actually has decent enough bulk for it to not really be threatened by Persian. Like, a lot of people have started running Protect in the last slot, so Persian's fake out into return / double edge combination doesn't revenge kill Whiscash. So you protect against the fake out, return, or double edge probably won't kill you from full HP or even like 80. So you just managed to kill the Persian with a +1 earthquake, and that's what Whiscash has been good at doing since even like before we banned those waters. So that's why they're in a different section. Crawdaunt, on the other hand, though, I do think Crawdaunt has gotten overall worse in this current meta at the moment, because I don't know, the other water type like is the slowest out of the water types. Like, what Wailord, for example, is base 60. Whiscash is also base 60. We also have Fiona, stuff like that. That's base 80. Huntail is like, well, to be fair, Huntail's slower than Crawdaunt, but like, Huntail can boost its speed with Rain. Like, Crawdaunt has like Dragon Dance, which still makes it relatively slow, and you basically need to go Jolly, or else like things like Grovyle outspeed you naturally. So that's kind of insane. But Crawdaunt is still able to do his job realistically. Like, it can run a Dragon Dance set. It does have Cramp Armor. Hits significantly harder than Whiscash on the water side. Like, 78 attack versus 120 just is a massive difference. But it's just like, Crawdaunt isn't that bulky compared to Whiscash. Whiscash can actually take some hits. It doesn't have an electric weakness, but Crawdaunt is slow, has the electric weakness. It's not bulky in the slightest. Like, you really does suffer on the bulk side, and that's why Whiscash is the supreme, the superior Dragon Dance user compared to Crawdaunt. But what Crawdaunt has been doing right now, I've been seeing a lot of people run special Crawdaunt, which at least sets it apart from Whiscash in that sense, because Whiscash can't really run a special set. Is too weak, unfortunately. And if you want to run special Whiscash, literally run the other special water types. But at least something like Crawdaunt has like the dual stab. Like, you might not even see it coming, because like typical Crawdaunt checks, like, you know, the grass types, for example, don't want to be taking like stab dark pulse, to be honest. They'll do a lot of damage, and then you can like probably go dark pulse into ice beam to get the KO. So yeah, Crawdaunt is finding a way of differentiating itself from Whiscash, because frankly the Dragon Down sets on Crawdaunt aren't that good in my opinion. Like, they are really falling off recently, but yeah, it is differentiating itself in that regard. But yeah, let's talk about the rise of the water types, you know, the other water types that were in the shadows for many years, because of the fact that, you know, you had Lapras, Kingler, Warren in the tier, even Whiscash and Crawdon. A lot of these Pokemon were, or the ones that were got banned, really allowed these ones to rise from the depths and become meta-defining Pokemon. And the first one I do have to talk about is Wailord. Now, hear me when I say this, people that play DPP ZU, that Wailord is the best Pokemon in the tier. And like, I'm not, like, you guys can say it's not one of the best Pokemon in the tier, or Persian is still number one, but frankly, to me, Wailord has the same influence on the tier that, you know, Persian has, or even more the fact that waters in general have such an impact on the tier. But Wailord is clearly leading the charge, in my opinion. Now, if I'm saying such high praise about Wailord, why wasn't Wailord used before, like in the time of Lapras, Kingler, and Wolverine? Now, it's a pretty simple explanation. Like, Wailord was just inferior to Lapras and Wolverine as bulky water type attackers. Like, they had, you know, dual typing stat. Like, even though the ice typing gave them, you know, a rock sweetness, and Wailord doesn't have to worry about that. You know, having that extra offensive pressure on like stab ice beam versus non-stab ice beam, you're also relatively like bulkier. Like, although Wailord has 170 HP, the defenses don't live up to that number. You know, like Lapras and Wolverine have more balanced bulk and you know, stat distribution. Like, Lapras has once a 30 HP, like 85 defense and 90. Now I think it's, what was it again? Like, I'm forgetting. Yeah, so Lapras had 80 defense and 95 super def. Warren had 110, 90, 90, for example. So more balanced than 170 and 45. Like, you basically have to invest in Wailord's defenses for that HP stat to actually somewhat matter if you want Wailord to actually take hits. But either way, what is Wailord doing right now that makes it the best Pokemon in the tier, in my opinion? It's just because Wailord has 10,000 sets it can run. Like, realistically, Wailord is a menace to, you know, DPP ZU. Like, I want to go over this replay of ZU Olympiad week 1 and just show you why Wailord is just built different. Like, no one even knew this was coming, but this was week 1 of the ZU Olympiad team tournament that's happening right now. So let's go over. I'm going to do a fast mode. So we decided to use our own Wailord on this side. Like, I'm on Spatial Rendezvous team right now, but yeah, Wailord, like, we decided to bring Scarf Water Spout, for example. Like, that's one of many sets that Wailord can run with a Choice Scarf, and this game is going all, you know, fine and dandy. You know, like, we're thinking like we're in a pretty decent position. You know, there's the Shuka Morwell, you know, substitute Arbok, things like that, and like the game plays out perfectly, like, fine for the first couple of like tens of turns, or, you know, turn 20 or whatever. I don't know how long this game was, but either way, like, things seem to be going like in a decent position for Spatial Rendezvous. You know, like we still haven't seen what, you know, Haysop's last 2 Pokemon are, but at this point we're just like, yeah, we're in a decent position. You know, Scarf Lunatone, we can play around that, you know, things like that, and, you know, Beedrill gets sacked. Now, Haysop was hiding this menace of a Wailord somewhere, you know, and we were very scared because Curse Wailord, like, damn, like, we really did not expect that. So Curse was coming out, and that's not even half, that is just half of the situation. Like, you're going to be seeing the other half soon, but I'll speed up this replay a little bit. But at this point is Amnesia Wailord, which obviously doubles the special defense plus Curse. Now, no one saw this set coming, like, I'm not going to lie. Like, at this point before ZU Olympiad started, like, the tier hadn't really had any, you know, tournament representation because of the fact, at least post, you know, Wailord, now Wolverine and Lapras ban. But at this point, you know, this is Curse Amnesia Rest Wailord, and this was a set that, like, we didn't think of, or at least clearly Haysop and his team, realized this set was a menace and a half in the late game. And it goes from, Spatial having a decent matchup to, Spatial absolutely getting, manhandled by this Waylord set, which, is pretty disgusting, actually. Like, you basically have to fish for, critical hits versus the Waylord, which obviously ignores stat drop. So, like, just week one of, Z Olympiad, and we have a game like this where, the Waylord basically 1v1s the rest of Spatial Rendezvous's team. And, like, we could see the rest of these replays as well going into, Z Olympiad, for example. Waylord is just everywhere, is, like, clearly leading the charge in terms of the influence that it has on the team, in terms of, what it can do. Even going into week two of, Z Olympiad, and Waylord is still making his rounds, like, you just can't go wrong with it. Like, it still does damage, it's bulky, there's a lot that you can do with it. Like, we can go over the rest of these replays. I literally have 12 tabs full of replays just of Waylord at this point, but let's discuss the sets, okay? So, what is Waylord capable of? Like I said, week one, Spatial Rendezvous ran a Choice Scarf Waylord set, which, can do a lot of damage because you're running things like Water Spout, which hits pretty hard. You have Ice Beam, you have Hidden Power Grass. This is all the water type. Like, in terms of special attack and water types, it's always the water move, is always Ice Beam, and is always Hidden Power Grass. Like, or unless you get like another grass coverage move that isn't Hidden Power Grass, like Grass Knot or, Energy Ball. But I don't think any of the water types, have anything outside of HP Grass. But either way, self-destruct, like, Waylord has self-destruct. That already just makes it a menace and a half, because pre-generation 5 explosion and self-destruct, they half your defense stats. So effectively, self-destruct has a base power of 400. And seeing Waylord's, attacking stats, attack stat being pretty much identical to his special attack stat, it's very easy for Waylord to just guarantee a kill on something with self-destruct if they're not a ghost type, or, they're not a rock or steel type. And obviously rock is weak to water, and steel types don't, like, the premier steel type Pro Repulse is weak to water, so you have things like that. Waylord also has like sub-toxic. You can run sub-toxic leftovers, which is a pretty decent set as well, or sub-3 attacks. Like, substitute plus anything in this tier on the water types does like wonders, because you obviously can force the grass type in. Getting a substitute off means you basically have a free turn to click the Ice Beam versus the grass type, and chunk them for really good damage. And it's just like Surf, or Surf HP Grass, or you can go, obviously Surf HP Grass is walled by grass type Pokemon, particularly Gloom if you're not running Ice Beam. So you could just run Surf Ice Beam, but you're walled by water types as well. But the whole point is you probably get to toxic the water types to threaten them. Waylord also can run the Curse Amnesia set that Haysop brought week one, and some other people have actually brought the Curse Amnesia set again, which is just basically Curse Amnesia, Waterfall, and Rest with the leftovers. And this is pretty much impossible to take out, unless you get critical hits, if it gets enough boosts. And like, I don't exactly know the EV spread. I would assume is like max HP. Now, I would assume it's max defense, max special defense, because Waylord's HP stat is already gargantuan in the first place, so you're pretty much free to invest in both of these and just go ham at this point. So yeah, you also have this Waylord set. Like, some people are even talking about specs. I've been trying to run spec Waylord, or even life of Waylord, as like just all-out attacking Waylord set with Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, Hidden Power Grass, and Surf, probably, because that's all you need on this. Like, water, ice, and grass is just perfect coverage already, and like Waylord is like still somewhat bulky enough to take a good amount of hits, and like you can go Timid Nature to speed type with Whiscash, of course, and hit it with Hidden Power Grass. So I've suggested so many Waylord sets, and the impact that it just has on tournament play as well. Like, let's just go into another random replay. We have Drud versus Beraldino, and I'm expecting a Waylord this game because it's just that good. Like, we haven't seen the Waylord yet, but I'm telling you guys, there's like a water type somewhere. Like, again, Whiscash is there, for example. Like, it's a pretty good Pokemon. Like, there's always a water type on the team in DPP ZU. Like, you just can't go a game without it, because clearly they're just some of the best Pokemon the meta has to offer. Now, see, Wild Drud comes out with the Crawdaunt, and like obviously versus something like Bayonet, for example. So they go for the Endure, actually. So this is also another set that Crawdaunt is capable of running, and like Bayonet does have Shadow Sneak, which is unfortunate, but that Crawdaunt set would have definitely gone ham. And The Hidden Power Grass comes out, fails to kill the, Whiscash, and Drud loses that game, unfortunately, because, oh wait, or Scarf and Lunatone. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, there's water type on every team. But yeah, Wailord, I do think Wailord's the best Pokemon in the team without a doubt. It's just too good at what it does. Is just way too good at what it does. Like, it can be defensive, it can be offensive. Self-destruct is pretty heinous because you just trade 1-for-1 with the opposing Pokemon. And like Hatesaw, again, this is another Hatesaw game where, like, he's up against Spatial Rendezvous again. So we helped build this team, and like Hatesaw had the Wailord again, and I think we do have the water type in the back, which is Fione as well, which I'll get on to speaking about soon. But yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on Wailord. Like, as you can see, self-destruct against the Carnivine, almost killed the Carnivine, and like Wailord just forces like a lot of like Pokemon. Like, it's so splashable, goes on every single sort of team. So yeah, that is enough about Wailord. There are some other water types to talk about, and I don't like. Again, Wailord deserves his own video. Like, if I want to talk about DPP ZU, but yeah, let's talk about Dugong now. Now, Dugong was pretty much a non-existent Pokemon, when Lapras and Walrein were in the tier. Like, they're the 3 water ice types, and obviously Dugong's the worst out of all of them. It hits, does not hit as hard. Like, let's just do a quick comparison. Actually, let's do a quick comparison. Let me get rid of these Wailords. They're kind of blocking my view. But yeah, let's look at the stat distribution between Lapras, Walrein, and Dugong here. So let's look. So 130 HP, 80, 95, 110, 90, 90, and then you have Dugong with 90, 80, 95. Now, it pretty much has the same defense, special defense as Lapras, but the only difference is the HP difference, and obviously Walrein hits a lot harder and has higher defense. Is less faster, is slightly less faster than Dugong, but again, doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things. Lapras also has Hydro Pump, and Dugong does not have Hydro Pump. Like, yeah, Dugong is obviously the worst out of these guys, but when they're banned, Dugong stocks go up, so they go up. So Dugong basically does what these guys did, at least to, a much more balanced degree, because you don't hit as hard and you're not as bulky. Like, Dugong, unfortunately, just can't hit as hard. Base 70 special attack, while good by DPP ZU standards, is not to the extent that, Lapras was, running choice specs and we could not handle it in the slightest, things like that. But yeah, basically just does the same thing. It has Ice Beam, it has Hidden Power Grass, and like, it's just pretty good at what it does. It's also one of the bulkiest like water switchings itself. That's not even *4 resist, because that's a *8 resist to Ice type use. Like, Dugong is not taking any damage from Ice Beam, neither is taking damage from Surf. It's bulky enough to take opposing Hidden Power Grasses from Wailord, Seadra, for example, and hit back pretty hard as well. So yeah, Dugong is pretty also one-dimensional in terms of what it can do, because like its move pool is pretty barren compared to like let's say Lapras or Walrein. Like, their move pools aren't really that big. Like, it's still realistically water, ice, grass coverage plus like Toxic or Encore. On Dugong's side, it does have Encore, which is a pretty decent tech, all things considered. Ice Shard is also some priority that can run to revenge kill stuff, but like Encore has probably more use, and Toxic as well. Also can pull off a substitute set as well, substitute 3 attacks, or that's all it really needs. And yeah, Dugong is pretty good at what it does. Onto Fione as well, is again the same story really, with the water type stamp option, Ice Beam, Hidden Power Grass. But what Fione can offer over that is the fact that it has U-turn as a pivoting option. Now, it's the only water type that's able to pull off this quite easily as well. I'm pretty sure Huntail has Baton Pass, but you don't really have the space for that, to be fair. But yeah, Fione is offensive pivot as well. You have 80 all around, which is actually pretty good by DPPZ standards, where you're faster than Dugong, you're stronger than Dugong. You also have relatively good bulk as well. I don't know why I put Jolly, but yeah, set like this for Fione can work. I've seen a lot of people run choice specs as well. They can. There's a lot of things you can do with these water types, and it really just depends on the sort of set you really want to run on them. Like, choice spec sounds pretty dangerous, all things considered, because it just hits hard. Water, ice, grass coverage is unresisted, and yeah, you can do a lot of damage. You can U-turn out of bad situations as well, like just keep momentum, get something in, get a breaker in, maybe another water type as well. But yeah, Fiona again wasn't a Pokemon that really existed too much before, you know, we banned all of the good stuff, but or the broken stuff, I'll say. But yeah, it's a pretty good Pokemon. Now Seadra though, Seadra did not see any usage, at least did not see much, wasn't on the viability rankings either too much, before, you know, all of these bans came through. And Seadra is kind of cool, like it has 95 special attack, it has Hydro Pump, it's also base 85 speed. Now base 85 speed is pretty cool in DPPZU because you're faster than the base 80s, like Arbok for example. You know, that's pretty good all things considered. You're faster than the other water types as well, particularly if you want to pull off a Choice Scarf set or, you know, an Agility set. Like, if you go Agility Seadra, you're pretty much just outspeeding the entire tier. There's no way around it. Like, you're just outspeeding the entire tier. And, yeah, the only thing that holds Seadra back, of course, is the lack of, you know, bulk. It can take physical hits quite well, but on the special side, don't expect Seadra to be taking any special hits. He's going to be dying in one hit. But, yeah. And then we have Huntail as well. Now, Huntail, unlike Gorobis, is not banned. I suppose it's pretty obvious why it's not banned. It just can't hit as hard, like, especially on the physical side. Like, 104 attack is pretty strong, but we do have physical, like, walls. We have grass types. It's also pretty slow under rain. Like, Common Scarf is also handle it pretty efficiently as well. So Huntail is a pretty balanced version of Gorobis, where, you know, Gorobis literally has like no switching on the special side. At least you can like pull off you know, Rain Dance, can run Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, Hidden Power Grass, and, you know, do some pretty good damage as well. So yeah, there's that. Probably want to go Timid Nature, because you can outspeed like base 80 Scarfers like Fiona. I'm pretty sure you're able to outspeed Seadra, I think. Scarf base 85s, I think. I'll have to double check that. Even base 90s. So yeah, you don't outspeed base 90 Pokemon, unfortunately, because things like Golbat are on the tier. But you're able to outspeed base 85 and below, I believe. So, you know, Huntail has that going for it. But yeah, so these are probably the common waters you're going to be seeing in the tier. Let me just add back Whiscash and Crawdaunt, for example, and also Wailord too. But yeah, these are definitely the water types that are running the tier right now. Honestly, I think Wailord's running the entire tier. Definitely the best Pokemon in the tier. A lot of people probably won't agree with that, but, you know, this is what I believe. So yeah, these guys are definitely the best options we have in the meta, and they're always so good to, you know, have in the meta game. Now, there's still a good amount of water types left that, you know, DBZU has to offer, but these are somewhat niche options. A lot of these are pretty niche, all things considered, but we're still going to cover them because they make up, you know, the meta game, and they do have their specific uses when you decide to build around them. So B-Barrel, for example. Now, B-Barrel, you're probably thinking, what the hell does B-Barrel offer, you know, in Generation 4, for example? Now, it has Simple and Unaware, which, you know, it can run like a curse set with, you know, Simple, but, you know, B-Barrel is not that bulky, all things considered. Like, you could go like a max HP, max Spadef set with, you know, Simple, because Simple, you know, double stat changes. It does work a bit differently in Generation 4, where it's not doubled stat changes, but when it's, you know, taken into damage calculations, it acts like it's, you know, doubled stat changes, which I don't understand why they decided to implement it like this in Generation 4. You could have just doubled, you know, the stat boost, but, you know, it still relatively works the same. It just has different, you know, implementation. But you could just pull off a curse rest talk set with B-Barrel, though. To any success anyone has ever had with this has yet to be seen. I've never really seen a B-Barrel sweep ever in any circumstance, but you could pull this off, but it's just too frail to even attempt to even try this. It's also like, Cat's also harsh at speed because of Simple. So, you know, like the freaking grass types will like outspeed and kill it in one hit. But obviously, you'll probably want to set up when the grass types are dead. Like, it's more of a late game win con, which, you know, we have a good amount of those in DPPZU. Other than, you know, a potential curse set that may or may not even be, you know, good in the tier, B-Brow is pretty much seen as like a Stealth Rock lead, because it has Stealth Rock, which is pretty interesting for its kit. But you could run like a lead set, because there isn't that many lead rockers in the tier, but, you know, B-Brow is one of them. But it's still relatively a niche Pokemon. Outside of that, like, you want to be running other waters. Like a lot of teams can afford to run 2 water types on the team because they're just that meta defining. They just bring good qualities to the table, and B Barrel just brings averageness to the table. So what else can I really say? Omina, on the other hand, is another suicide lead sort of Pokemon, only designated to this role, but can actually pull it off decently well. Again, like I mentioned before, the hazard removal option in DPP ZU is pretty limited, all things considered. Like Delibird is never seen, Hitmonchan or Maldo, these guys are not DPP ZU. Like, you can't differentiate a ZU mon on the builder, but all of these fully evolved Pokemon other than Delibird are not in the tier. So we're left with Wartortle, or like, unless you want to run like Staryu, and I will mention Staryu after Omina as well, because Staryu does have a niche. It's not particularly that bad. It does have some positive traits going for it, but either way, yeah, you just have to rely on a Pokemon like Wartortle, which is kind of passive, but it's like, realistically, you don't need hazard removal on DPP ZU, and building with it kind of just locks you down to some mediocrity sometimes. So like, I don't build with hazard removal. A lot of people don't really build with hazard removal in mind. You just have to kind of affirm that rocks are going to be up for the rest of the game, and potentially Toxic Spike, but Toxic Spike are less dangerous because you have common Pokemon in the tier like Arbok that can obviously absorb Toxic Spikes, so that's not really the biggest issue. It's more like Omanyte can offer spikes and rocks to the table, and having spikes and rocks up is pretty detrimental, especially to the majority of teams that aren't running hazard removal option, aka Wartortle or Staryu or something like that. And yeah, like Omanyte does have that niche, and that's why he's a pretty decent Pokemon in the meta. But I did put in the niche set because, again, outside of its lead, like, you're never running Omanyte seriously. Like, full rain doesn't exist in the table because Damproc is banned, so it's not even like you could abuse the rain abusing fact of Omanyte. So yeah, pretty decent suicide lead option, and like getting up spikes for certain teams is actually pretty beneficial. But yeah, Staryu, one of the only consistent spinners. I do think Staryu is probably the best spinner we have in the tier. Definitely better than Wartortle, because at least Staryu has an offensive presence. It has 85 base speed. It shares that speed tier with what's it called, Seadra. It's also faster than Arbok. It's also faster than the other water type Pokemon. I can threaten them for pretty much super effective damage with Bolt Beam combination, which Staryu has access to. So you typically run like Hydro Pump. This is all Staryu really needs. I don't really think you can fit Recover anywhere because you basically need all of these attacks. You could drop the Water Stab. It might not be necessary for you to run Water Stab, but yeah, if you do want to try and fit Recover, but yeah. Because Staryu has like negative bulk and taking hazard damage as well, but having a stab option to threaten the ghost type, switching like Bayonet for example with like a really strong Hydro Pump is actually a pretty good thing to have. And also has natural cure, so you can switch in on attempted T waves and swap out and you're not affected. So yeah, Staryu's niche, definitely not a common water type you'll see in the tier, but it's still one that definitely has more of a niche than, let's say, B-Barrel, for example. Clamperl as well. Now we're getting into really niche territory, because Clamperl was actually kind of dangerous because of Deep Sea Tooth, which doubles its special attack, which is already decently high by DPZ standards. Like reaching 271 with a modest nature, like double that, and that's 542. So it's hitting pretty darn hard with, obviously, again, the Surf Ice Beam Hidden Power Grass combination. Now obviously Clamperl is held back by his abysmal speed, but you could obviously alleviate this with like some baton pass shenanigans, passing the agility boost to Clamperl, and suddenly it reaches 326 speed. So you have to take that into consideration. 326 speed isn't fast by any means. I mean, it's faster than almost as fast as base 100 Pokemon, but again, if you want to go timid, you go up to 348, which is just shy of base 110. So you're not faster than Persian, unfortunately, but you could probably just play around that and beat Persian. But yeah, a mon that's a bit too reliant on Baton Pass, for example, or Trick Room, which again is already quite niche in DPP ZU. That's why Clamperl is in this section. Okay, I'm back. I had to go check something quickly, but yeah. So I finished speaking about Clampel, and yeah, like I said, it is a pretty niche option because it's just too slow to really like do anything. Like Trick Room isn't really an existing thing in DPPZU, so I suppose like the best thing you could get out of it is baton pass like agility into it, and then outspeed the entire tier or attempt to try and outspeed the entire tier like outside of Persian. So that's like your best bet. But at least you have like good enough physical bulk, so you can protect on the faker and not be revenge killed as easily. By Persian. So there is that. Plus, any Scarfer just outspeeds this anyway, so it's pretty inconsistent, all things considered. But yeah, Octillery on the other hand, though, I do think Octillery has a place, but it's not even ranked by us, the DPPZU Council, which definitely have to try and use Octillery a bit more. But on paper, Artillery does, have, a lot of offensive pressure as well. 105 special attack is pretty good with coverage options. Like, Artillery is the only water type that doesn't have to rely on hidden power to actually, do a lot of damage. Like, you have strong attacks like Energy Ball. Like, Energy Ball's base 80 compared to Hidden Power's base 17 Generation 4. They obviously nerfed that to 60 in Generation 6, which is quite sad. But here, Hidden Power is 70 base power, but like you still have Surf, no Hydro Pump this gen for some reason, but you have Surf. You also have would you run Ice Beam or Flamethrower? Either way, you're running either one of these two, and then you'll probably run like you could probably go like Substitute or something. Like Artillery is pretty good in terms of its coverage options. Like probably Sniper even. Like if you get like at least one crit in Gen 4, which is already double damage, multiplying that by 1.5 again, like you're guaranteed like Oko and something at that point. But yeah, Flamethrower, Ice Beam. I'm still just trying to think about whether I'm just trying to think about the coverage on that. Coverage Fire versus coverage Ice. Like it's mostly here for hitting the grass type for super effective damage, but I suppose hitting dragons, which again aren't really common outside of Shelgon, I guess that's something. But Flamethrower is probably the superior option, or even Fire Blast if you want to have more power, which I always go for power. Just expect to miss most of the time. But yeah, Artillery is pretty, in terms of coverage wise, like, I think it's pretty decent. Obviously the speed tier lets it down, but at least you could reach certain speed benchmarks and then like invest the rest in HP, and you're pretty decent like bulky attacker. You just don't really have much opportunities to get in, which is something that Pokemon like Wailord can do, Pokemon like Dugong can do, which is why they're pretty common as well. And then like even Whiscash to a certain extent, like it can take hits and start setting out, but Artillery doesn't really have that luxury, especially with its speed tier. So that's why like no one has ever really thought about using it. But it's definitely a surprise pick for sure. I do think it has its merit, especially with it's pretty good coverage options, all things considered. Like you could even go Life Orb or Expert Belt. Expert Belt is probably cooking every single grass type in this tier, so there's things like that to consider. War Turtle as well, the other spinner that's actually worth running in this tier, but I don't know. Like War Turtle is just a bit too passive. Now, like you do have some decent options, like I mean, what decent options? Most of the facts is just like Rapid Spin, Toxic, maybe Protect and Surf, for example. Like probably Hardwood by Grass, like Gloom, for example. But Gloom also isn't the only grass type in this tier. So there's things like that to consider. And yeah, Waterdo is kind of bulky if you invest, so there's that. But overall, it's just kind of too passive, and doesn't really do much outside of that. Like Spin again isn't really that necessary. I suppose like you could catch out Bayonet on the Rapid Spin with like a Toxic or Surf, and then Bayonet isn't the bulkiest Pokemon either, so it's actually taking some damage from Surf. But yeah, I don't know, Waterto isn't really that good in my opinion. Like it could be better, to be fair. And yeah, but yeah, the last Pokemon I wanted to talk about now, since we've basically hit the end of this discussion, is Corsola. Now Corsola, I've tried Corsola. I think I used Corsola in like the last ZUPL, and I was not impressed at all. This one's pretty bad. Like it does have some decent defensive merits, like being a stealth rocker that isn't weak to water, because the like most common stealth rockers in this tier, let's just go over it right now. Things like Camera Up, times for weak to water. You have I honestly do like Dunsparce. Obviously, he's a niche option as hell, but at least that's not weak to water. You know, Kecleon isn't weak to water. Lunatone's weak to water. Probopart's weak to water. And that's it. And that's it, really. I mean, Whammadam Trash is weak to water. Now, that now I'm just making it sound like Corsola has less reason to be used because there's actually some consistent, you know, rockers that aren't weak to water. Like that Corsola. That's basically Corsola's, you know, niche, I suppose, like it not being weak to water, but unfortunately Corsola is just way too passive as well. Like there's a lot of other, you know, it does have recovery though. Like on paper it should actually be decent, but it just isn't. In practice it's just not that good. Like it is neutral to water, but can't even take that because you're just like, you can't really switch in on anything because at the same time, like you're neutral to water, but you just get cooked by HP grass as well. Like the other rockers just offer a lot more to the table. Like Probopass is a steel type. That's already reason enough to use it in DPPZU, where the best Pokemon is a normal type, or you know, one of the best Pokemon is a normal type. You know, Lunatone as well is a rock type that actually has an offensive presence, has a wing con potential, rock polish. You know, has a ground immunity, which Corsola is weak to. Not like EQ is the most common thing in the world, but you know, like Lunatone has a ground immunity, so it's not like affected by spikes in any way. And though like you do have like a natural cure ability, which basically means you can't be toxic, but you still have to swap out. Like you can't really stay in if you have like 2 T spikes out, for example. So yeah, there's just stuff like that that, you know, stop Corsola from really being that good in the team, in my opinion. Like you do have Stealth Rock Recover, and then like what last, like if you don't run Toxic, you just don't do any damage to anything. And then if you do run Toxic, you're only running like Surf, which I guess can, you know, be enough, you know, like that should probably just be enough for this Pokemon. But yeah, in practice wasn't really that good. Didn't really like it too much, but on paper it actually did seem so good. But yeah, so that's the water types of Generation 4 ZU. A lot of really fun Pokemon to use in my opinion. Definitely some that require some more exploration, like Artillery. Definitely a mon that I could see being ranked on the next, you know, voting for the viability rankings when I guess the EPL comes around, or you know, because we just updated the viability ranking, so I can't even say after the Olympiad is when we'll have another voting slate for the viability rankings. Yeah, like it'll be too recent, but yeah. But let's look at some DPPZU teams before I end off this video in terms of just like the structure of it all, like where the water types fit into the structure of most teams. Now, I am hiding some of my teams because I don't want to show off my teams, like just in case I get this video coming out on the 16th before you know, my DPP ZU Cup Finals game. But either way, just looking at some of these teams, like this is a niche as hell team. I won't lie, like there's Dunsparce on it, but it was mostly a team that I wanted to use around Huntail, and obviously there's like the 2 water, you have a normal type, I suppose, Arbok. Like this isn't the most standard DPP ZU team. So let me actually just show you this one, which I'm pretty much a pretty good fan of this one, honestly. Like it has Seadra with the Mystic Water with substitute 3 attacks, which is actually pretty dangerous. I don't know if I wanted to run Expert Battle over Mystic Water, but seeing the calcs against Mystic Water against neutral targets, like Seadra can pretty much Oko something like Persian with Mystic Water Hydro Pump after rocks pretty easily. Expert Battle does help with your coverage options, especially hitting like things like Wailord and Dugong harder with Hidden Power Grass. But I don't know, I just like the neutral damage of Hydro Pump. But as you can see, this is a pretty standard DPPZ team. You have your water type, you have Persian, for example. Always have your rock on deck, maybe a wind con and steel type, and then you know we have Gloom here for, you know, things like Whiscash and Crawdaunt. Now this Gloom is obviously worse at handling special water type threats, which I have been starting to run, you know, Spadef Gloom a bit more. Because you know, like being to it cured by Ice Beam or something, like I'm not really too much of a fan of that. So that's you know, especially defensive. We also have this team with the Butterfree lead. I'm running a double water core again with like Camerupt, for example, because Camerupt is pretty nice despite his weakness to water. Like obviously it being a fire type threatening out the grass type Pokemon like Gloom and Carnivine is also something that you have to take into account. Butterfree lead as well, pretty good at what it does, guarantees a sleep on something unless they have like Insomnia Bayonet on the other side. And then yeah, just the double water core again, we have the sub 3 attack Seadra plus a sub DD Crawdaunt, which this team is alright, but not one of my better ones, to be fair. Like there's like this one with the bayonet lead with Spec, Seadra plus Waylord. Like this is like defensive Waylord. Like a team like this, like again, Waylord is just so versatile in what it can do. Like I just decided to go defensive Waylord here because I'm just like, what's Waylord really doing? I could probably drop Raw on this for Toxic just so this thing actually, you know, has some, you know, power. But I was also going Careful Nature like an idiot. My bad. That was a, you know, miss side that I saw. But I liked a team like this because you know, you have lead bayonet, which I honestly think is pretty nice. But yeah, the water types have a lot of you know, they do a lot in the tier, and they make part of the tier, to be honest. Like there's always been, whenever there's been a DPP ZU meta, there's always been a water type. There's always been water types at the top just because of their qualities, their defensive profile, the offensive profile with just Surf, Hydro, Ice Beam, Hidden Power Grass. Like that's all. Like half of the special attackers here just run like Dugong, Fiona, Hunter, even if they go special oriented, Seadra, Waylord, even like Artillery, for example, just with the water, ice, grass coverage, like it just works. It's just so strong. But yeah, that is it for this video on DPP ZU. I am thinking of making another video regarding DPP lower tiers as well, particularly even the tier that's below ZU, which is called SU. A lot of people don't know about SU, but you know, just like how the video about RBY7U blew up, I hope to make a video like that for DPP SU, at least when it's in a more balanced state, and you know, hopefully that will make a lot of people click on the video because they're like, what, there's a tier lower than ZU, like wow, things like that. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for, you know, watching me ramble about, you know, DPP water types for, you know, 15 minutes or an hour. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I had to, you know, cut this into 2 parts. But yeah, thanks for watching again, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.